Well, hello, my name is Ted Gardner. I'm an interviewer for the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County.
All right.
And I'm interviewing Carl Clendening
Mm-hmm.
on the September the 26th, 2006 at the Hyde Park Library. Kathy, it's a pleasure to be here. Our camera operator today is Kathy Reed. And so, Carl, it's in these interviews, and what we have, what we're trying to do, of course, is to let history know
Right.
who
Sure.
we are and what we've done. And I think it's a tremendous program that the Library of Congress started,
Mm-hmm.
and then, of course, engaging the public libraries throughout the country.
Right.
And it's so darn important, and you know as I know, and you've spoken to people before, some people are reluctant to talk about their past, you know, and they say, oh, it's history, it's behind me, and that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And, but I'm being sort of a historian myself, I don't let people get off the hook that easily if they tell me that, because I say that, and obviously you're well aware of this and feel very strongly about it, that it's important that we talk about this, because
Right.
once we're gone, it's gone.
That's right.
And
That's right.
and that's history, and it needs to be preserved.
Right.
And so it's just an honor to speak with you and to find out you're a neighbor, and you're born in Nashville, Tennessee.
Right.
And by George, you're 11 days older than I am.
Is that right?
Yes, sir. Mine's the 28th of February,
Is that
1921.
17, that's right.
Yeah, how about that? Well, another thing is, of course, that you were raised in Nashville,
Yes.
educated and raised there.
Raised in
Tell us
Nashville.
about your family background there.
Well, my family on both sides, my grandparents, they were all from Nashville or around. My grandfather was, he graduated in the first medical class of Vanderbilt University,
Right.
1882.
Goodness, what a...
And all of my relatives were down there, and nothing great happened to them. They had a coal lumber yard in Nashville, and one branched off and went down and practiced dentistry in Memphis, and the rest of them stayed in Nashville. And the Depression came, and my father was working with a hardwood lumber company, and he was editor of their paper, and we moved up here to Cincinnati.
I see.
And funny thing about it, when we didn't know anything about Cincinnati, and the first place we went to was a place called Howe Family Hotel. That was 1 block from the Alms on McMillan.
Okay.
And today, it's the site of the Ursula School for Girls Gymnasium.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
built it there.
All right, right across the street from
And
the
we
main.
lived there for, during the summer till we got our feet on the ground, found out, you know, where Chester Park was and a few things like that. And then we moved to Clifton, and I went to Clifton School till I graduated, and then went to Hughes.
Oh,
And then when I went to Denison, the war broke out, and I enlisted in the Army, and I was called up in 1943,
mm-hmm.
and I went through the normal course, I'd say, of everybody that joined the Army. I was in a tank destroyer group for a while, and the war got over in the desert, and they closed down Officer Candidate School down at Camp Hood. And then I kind of bummed around. They put me in an interpreter school for French language for a while, and that just didn't fit very well with what I wanted to do. And finally I ended up with, in Oklahoma with an artillery group.
Fort Sill, huh?
Well, and then they came around one day and said, say, we're not going to need a baseball team anymore because we're going to go overseas. And what you're going to do when you go overseas, you're going to tag the dead. So I asked if there was anything left in the Army at that time. And
there must be something else.
Well, this was 1944 now.
Yes.
And they said, well, the only thing open is Officers Candidate School down at Fort Bend, Georgia. And I went there, and I was commissioned in January of 1945. And, you know, the war's over by then. And my orders were cut because it was right after the Bulge, and it was still going on in December and early January. And we were supposed to go overseas on the Queen Elizabeth. And it had 17,000 troops on board, and all of our orders were cut.
Just imagine.
And as the boat was coming into dock in New York City, the tugboat operators went on strike, and the captain of the Queen Elizabeth tried to do it all alone, and he only missed it 3 inches, but he took a whole section of the dock away and also kind of tore a hole in the boat. So it took us, our orders were all cut, so we couldn't do anything.
Right.
And we had to wait till the boat was fixed, repaired. Yeah. And so every night we got to go into New York. And well, I'd never been to New York, you know.
Pretty good liberty
once I got
there.
my mouth shut, you know. But and we went over. We were sailed on the Queen Elizabeth, and she cruised at 41 miles an hour.
Right.
And we landed in Scotland, came from Scotland down through England and went over to Le Havre. Nobody there to meet us on this little boat we were on. And we finally found somebody, and we went from one location to the other in France. And finally, we were on our way to Strasbourg. We were in a, well, really it was a 40-8 from World War I.
Sure.
And it was cold. That was in March. My gang, I had 14, I wouldn't call them soldiers, they were from West Virginia, and they didn't like anything at all about anything. And I said, well, you do what you want to do. If you want to set a fire in the middle, if you're cold, go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. And they set a fire and set the car on fire. And they not only got warm for a short time, but they had built a great big hole. They burned a big hole right through the center of the rail car. And we finally had to spend the time, the rest of the day. They didn't stop, and we couldn't tell anybody.
No.
We had no communication to the front, and so we had to hang on kind of, you know, by the side there, the tracks are right down here. And we finally got to Strasbourg, and that's when I joined the 45th Division on about the around the 20th or 21st of March, as I recall.
Right. Well, that was a very famous outfit, the 45th.
That's right. It was. They'd been very successful in Italy, and they came up through southern France. And when I joined them, the first day, we went through the Siegfried Line, and we captured 20 or 22, 21 pillboxes. And we received a presidential citation. That's what I never saw, and I don't know whether that was latrine talk or not. You know, everyone say, "Oh, we're going to get the citation."
Oh yeah, sure.
And then we started through Germany, and we crossed the Rhine at Worms, and there was absolutely no resistance at all.
Opposition.
Yeah, the war was over, actually.
Yeah.
The Canadians and the French and the British, they'd all cross the Rhine in various locations, and of course the Stars and Stripes publication we read, and every day we would read, the war's over, and everybody's celebrating and so forth. And you know, Hitler's going to kill himself on about the 6th or 7th of April.
Mm-hmm.
And we're walking along, you know, kind of like on a picnic. And everybody said, I got a bottle from schnapps to this, and of course, and every night up to the front where we were, if there was supposed to be a war going on, I received a bottle of Old Grandad every night.
Wow.
And of course, I gave it to my that group that was with me.
Those West Virginia.
And we, you know, everybody was talking about, oh boy, what are you going to do? And Berlin was almost ready to fold over and with Hitler gone almost by then. And we ran into a little town by the name of Alfenschaffenburg, about 25 miles southeast of Frankfurt on the Main.
Mm-hmm.
And we got the hell beat out of us.
They counterattacked
really,
on you?
just in this town.
Yeah.
We had no idea.
Is that so?
We didn't. I think we had some very, very poor
intelligence,
information who was doing it. But I started off with my group, and you know, I had a pair of German field glasses on that must have been, they must have been almost 2 feet long. They were big ones. And I had a canteen full of schnapps, and you know, and my webbing. Everybody carried 2 or 3 grenades in their webbing, and when I got hit by a small arm up in the shoulder, and a guy had to help me up, and I had to cut all this stuff off to get up. I had so much on me that when I was down, I was weighed down.
Of course.
And we had a little skirmish there, and they finally got me back to the safe line, and the line walking back to the hospital zone, and I was stopped on the way by a colonel, and he said, "Can you spare just a minute, Lieutenant?" And he said, "Are you badly? Can you talk to me?" I said, "Oh, sure." And I stopped and talked to him, and he wanted to know what about sending in smoke. And I talked to him about this valley where we were in, and there were 4 tank destroyers down there that we couldn't get to. And I told him, you know, they could, if they had smoked the other side of the river, which was a main river, they might be able to put up enough of a cover that you could at least get the tank destroyers out, because they were a crew was on each one. And anyway, I got back to the collecting point for a hospital, and I'm in this building or out in the field where they'd set up this hospital operation, and a medic had taped my arm across my shoulder, and I was just sitting there waiting for the doctor, and a corporal came by, and he said, "Say, Lieutenant, how about a glass of brandy?" And I said, "Okay," you know. And and he gave me a canteen cup about like that. I looked almost full of brandy, and I'm sitting there with my good arm sipping on brandy, and then another guy comes by. I don't remember what rank he was, but he said, say, Lieutenant, he said, we've got some good soup. Chef Cookie, I think they called him, Cookie just made. And he said, it's very, very good. I said, fine. So he brought me a great big canteen of hot soup. I had a hot soup, put it down, then I'd have the brandy and put it down. And then they called me and they took me in and they did a little preparation for my arm, and then I was put into a field ambulance, and at a collecting point there were 5 of us in the ambulance, and it was hot in there. They had the heater on. They took us to another collecting point. We got out of the ambulance, and as I walked down the steps, I just kept on going. I mean, my feet just went out from under me. And everybody ran, and they got the oxygen tank out, and they got stretchers, and I'm trying to tell them I'm drunk, there's nothing wrong with me. But anyway, they sent me to this field hospital, the first field hospital that was on the east side of the Rhine, and my wounds were cauterized, and the doctor gave me a big needle in my shoulder somewhere, and I was talking to him while he was operating, and he said, where are you from, soldier? And I said, well, I'm from Cincinnati. He said, well, isn't that funny? He says, I'm from Glendale.
Well, for heaven's sake.
And he said, my name is Dr. Stevenson. And I said, well, he says, I said, you're mixed up with that bunch of Berghausen, that gang. He said, yeah. He said, that's right. He said, Barbara Stevenson is, I'm her uncle. And we had quite a long chat and so on. And he fixed me up, and I had a bad wound on my leg too. I got shot there the first day I joined the 45th.
Really? So you were shot on 2 different days, 2 different times.
I got 2 Purple Hearts.
Wow.
And I never did see the doctor again. Then they took me out to the airfield the next day, and I'm in a body cast at that point. And they flew me. We were going to Paris. It was in a DC-3 hospital plane, and they had a great big hole in the middle, kind of like that car I was telling you about, the 40 and 8, yeah, right. Except we're up about 3,000 feet. And they were emptying. Everybody was sick in the plane. It was everybody was on stretchers. And we finally we couldn't go to Paris because they couldn't give us clearance at Le Bourget. And we went to somewhere over in England, I have no idea, but they put me someplace where there was a Quonset hut and a pot-bellied red hot stove to dry me out, because that cast, it never did dry. Oh. And I stayed there, and I don't know, one hospital to the next, and they put it was as we were talking before a little while ago, this hospital group was a National Guard unit from New York, and it was a Jewish hospital bunch, and they were really good. I stayed in traction there with my arm up in the air for about I would say maybe 20 to 30 days. I forgot really? Which it was. And finally, the war's over, and the nurses got out that long evening dress that all of them carried along and been waiting to put on for the victory and so forth. And we finally, we were going to be flown home, but they had to send the plane to I don't know, somebody, big shots wanted to go somewhere in the South Pacific because that war was still on. Right. And so this was in May of 1945, and we landed in New York on Memorial Day, and they had the parade was just starting, and they had all of these ambulances. I don't know where they got them, but the sides were glass, like a, well,
Like a station wagon or something like that?
it looked like a funeral hearse more than anything else. You know, where you could see the
Parade of
flowers.
hearses.
Yeah, to see the flowers. But anyway, they put us in the ambulance and we went down and then we were sent up to a hospital somewhere. And the first thing they did in the hospital on the elevator, and I was with about 7 or 8 other men, and they said, "Gentlemen, I'm very sorry, but we're going to have to take your trousers." And they said, "We do that so you'll stay here and we can put you on a train tomorrow morning for your oath." And right then,
They must have thought you were a wild bunch.
Next to me, there was a brigadier general who was being brought home, but he had been all kind of messed up in the, I think he was a little messed up in the head.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, he said, look, he said, "I'm going to make one call to the Pentagon." He says, "I'm going to get these boys a 24-hour pass in New York City. They certainly deserve it." So we got a pass. And I bought it, the nurse bought a shirt at the PX for me, and she ripped it down the side and sewed it back up over this cast I had.
Mm-hmm.
And we go into New York, and of course, you know, we hit the first bar that came along and so forth, and then we were all going to meet at the bar at the Aston Hotel
Sure.
the next day at noon and go back, because we were due back at 1 o'clock. And we were in the bar at the Astor, and it was a little loud, and everyone could see us and so forth. And all of a sudden, there was a table with 4, I'd say old ladies. They were about 32 years old, 33 years old. But they said, "Would you like to join us? We've got tickets to a radio show right around the corner called Queen for a Day." And of course we all said, "Oh, hell yes, yeah, we like to be on radio, you know, yakety yak." And we went and joined the ladies, and we sat down, and they had a contestant, and they had various wishes and so forth.
Right.
And one woman said, well, she said, "My son and I," was 9 years old, she said, if I'm elected Queen for a Day, I would like to take the 5 soldiers from the 45th Division and be our guest in New York.
Wow.
Whoa, we almost tore that place down. And she won. And our host was Leo DeRocha, and he had with him George Raft.
My goodness sake.
And we had a table reserved for us. I don't know, it was some bar in New York. And Olson and Johnson used to go to this bar all the time, and they were our hosts there. And he took us backstage before their show and introduced us to all of their cast and so on. And then Look Magazine were hosts for us at Copacabana. And
Famous club.
And that's we were I don't know, we had 1 o'clock, 12:30, something like that. I've been carrying this arm around for all night, and they'd been putting crackers down my cast, and one time they caught me standing up in a taxi cab, and they shut the skylight on me, so I couldn't move. And I had to stand there while they went all over town, and I'm halfway up in it. But anyway, I went back. I just couldn't stand it longer. And I got back around 4 o'clock in the morning.
Holy cow.
And they said, "Well, would you see if you could get your other boys together, because we've got to a train from Ohio that's leaving here at 6 o'clock. It was 4 o'clock then. I called them and they said, no, we're not. He said, and Leo Durocher had to cancel for some kind of a fund he was with. And they said, no, Leo Durocher is going to have a poker game lined up for us tomorrow night. And we're going to stay and we're going to be there and so forth and so on. I said, fine. I said, they'll probably put you in the stockade and shoot you. And they all said, we don't care, you know. And so that's about, I finally got back to Ohio, and I was in a hospital for a long time there. And
here in Cincinnati?
Lo and behold, I ran into these 3 of these 4 guys at Fort Atterbury.
Oh,
And I had them
Indiana.
again. Indiana.
Yeah.
And I had them again. Oh. And the funny thing about it, I had a friend of mine who played football at Ohio State, and he invited us to come up and not be his guest, but he had tickets at the gate for us. And we started off, we thought we'd go up there early one Saturday morning of the game, and which we did, and we didn't get any farther than Fort Wayne. And we realized that we were in Fort Wayne, that we had taken the wrong road. And so we ended up going to Butler University, had a game there.
Oh, yeah.
And so we called and the sports editor of the Fort Wayne paper to see if he could get us in the tickets. He said, sure, be at the gate there. He said, at 1:15. And so we were all at the gate that had a kind of a bowl there right on campus. And we stopped and there had 5 tickets for us. And we walked over to the bowl and looked down, and there's not a soul in that stadium except the football teams. And it's snowing.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I don't know that. then I was in Fort. Oh dear. I was in Rossville, Georgia, at the Adjutant General School. I was there on an assignment as teaching a course on why we fought. And I had enough points to get out, but they couldn't get a replacement for me, and it was a joke what I was doing. I was taking the Time magazine and cutting them out, and and we would discuss it because I had all of these officers that were coming through that had been overseas and had been in the war. They didn't know an awful lot what had happened. And it was quite interesting. They were interested in pretty much what we had.
You'd been there. You'd seen it.
And then I stayed in the Army until 46. And then I got out, and I don't know. It was there wasn't a whole lot that I could tell you about. Really, I was in the Air Corps for a while, and then they found out they had 36,000 pilots, too many.
Right.
So then they canceled and put me back to the ground force. And while I was in the Air Corps at Lubbock, Texas, in basic training in pre-flight, Don Budge was our instructor.
Great tennis player.
Not an instructor, he was our tactical officer.
Oh.
And he and his wife lived right on campus, and Billy Talbot, who I went to Hughes High School with, Billy Talbot wrote Don Budge and said that I was down there under his jurisdiction and so forth. And he called me one day and said, we have a group that meet over at my place, and we played tennis on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought, boy, that'll be quite an honor, Well, we went over there, and I'm with a bunch of roughnecks, also invited there. They didn't give a damn. They drink that beer. They had a keg of beer.
Sure.
And we did that a couple of Sundays, and then we were sent back to the ground forces.
Right. Right. Well,
that's about it. I was in. I think I counted up. I was in something like 27 different Army post locations.
for heaven's sake.
Well,
You really got around.
well, yeah, but I think a lot of people did the same thing.
Yes,
And
I think so.
I ran into my roommate from Denison University, and one time,
Mm-hmm.
in Walters, Camp Walters, Texas.
For heaven's sake.
And I had a lot of friends that I met during the war, and a lot of friends that I knew that I ran across. I ran into at Shepherd Field. We were where I joined the Air Corps, and lo and behold, a very nice officer interviewed me in Shepherd Field and said, if you would mind being in Shepherd Field here with us for a period of, let's say, 3 or 4 more weeks, we can get you on a pre-flight assignment at Lexington, Kentucky. He said, that's near your home in Cincinnati. I said, sure is, okay. Well, I told everybody, go ahead, you guys get sounded away. I'm going to go back to Lexington. And finally, my bunk was moved up to the front of the barracks, and I'm taking roll call every morning. And about 3 or 4 weeks passed, and I thought maybe I'd better take a look at where this guy that's going to line me up in Lexington is. And I go up in front of the office, and I ask for him, and they said, well, he's gone. He's been gone 2 weeks. And I tell this whack, I tell her what I've done or what the situation is. She said, oh, I'm sure that they've just got your record sitting on the side up there. He said, if you hadn't come up to me, it might have been the whole war goes on. And your record would have been there on the desk. So they finally sent me down. That's when I went down to Lubbock, Texas. I spent Christmas down there, and then I spent the springtime with in Lubbock, and
Now that's the home of Texas A&M, isn't it?
no, that's at Texas A&M is at Sweetwater.
Oh, okay.
I think that, yeah.
Okay.
This is Lubbock, Texas.
Lubbock.
Lubbock, University of Lubbock, right outside of town at some little very small town. Was a friend of mine from Clifton. We went to school together. I went to Clifton School, Dick Ward, and he used to fly over, and we'd spend the weekend. But we had a lot of experiences like that. But
That's pretty good duty.
yeah, but I tell this to somebody today, and they say, "Well, you had a good time during the war," and I guess I did really. I didn't have a bad time.
No.
But but if you've ever slept in a parking lot in Waco, Texas, where they charge you $1 for a cot and a sheet, and you just pray to heavens that it doesn't rain.
Well, that is just fascinating,
Right, yeah.
Carl. I tell you that the good humor that you have, and I can see how personally you were very appealing to the people with whom you were associated, and you always got along with people very well. And that certainly helped you in the service, didn't it?
Yes, it does.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. You know, you're mentioning these guys from West Virginia who disliked everything.
Yeah.
You know, they had a tough time getting along with anybody outside their little group.
Yeah, that's right. Now that's a funny thing you have to mention that, because I was the only one that this group would let cut their hair. Now, if we didn't have a haircut, the hairline could not be below the helmet.
Right.
And I gave everybody there that wanted a haircut below their helmet. You know, I mean, and I used a razor blade. That's all we had.
Yeah.
But yeah, they wouldn't let anybody else use that razor blade on them. And they were, you had to laugh at them, because they had a humor that I'd never seen before. And I guess it's coal miners' humor. But,
Right.
But it was quite an experience for me.
Well, I should say, and you know what's interesting here in Cincinnati, and I found this as as an outsider when I first came to town in 1955. Hughes High School was the birthplace of a lot of wonderful people.
Well, when C.M. Mary was the principal there, a lot of people that we knew, and I didn't know this till later on after I graduated from school and met these people, their family moved over to Clifton Heights and Clifton just so they could go to Hughes High School.
Absolutely. Had a great reputation.
And yeah, it was, he was quite an educator too.
Did you ever know Harold Remeyer? Harold Remeyer lived on the west side, had a big lumber company, Remeyer Lumber Company, and he was a very prominent Hughes High School graduate. Another guy by the name of John Ahrens. Did you ever know John Ahrens?
Lived in Clifton?
Yeah.
Right in back of Virginia Bakery?
Yeah.
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 His father, the one that I knew, his father, they made fire trucks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, right
yeah,
there.
I went to school with him.
Yes. Well, John Ahrens is still living, and he and I are members of the Rotary Club of Cincinnati.
Is that right?
And I see him once in a while. He's in a wheelchair now, but John Ahrens still has a, like you, he has a great personality and a great joie de vivre, as the French would say.
Yeah, right.
And that's obvious in your presentation.
Well, we've got a group here. We have lunch on Thursdays, and
Where do you meet?
it's at the University Club.
Oh, yes.
We have a gyro club.
Oh, yes.
And I've got a whole bunch of friends that we always sat at one table, always at the back table. Well, over the past years, you know, that back table is pretty far away from the microphone up front. So now we don't hear very well, to be very honest with you.
So you're moving forward,
Oh,
are you?
that's right. We're moving forward and yelling, "Speak a little louder."
Yes, right. Use that microphone properly.
That's certainly true. That's certainly true.
Well, that is just terrific. You mentioned Denison University. What were you studying there?
Oh, to get through.
Get that degree.
But yeah, but you know, I went to Denison in 1939, and I don't know, maybe once in a while somebody was going to take medicine, and they stayed for 2 years at Denison, then went over to Ohio State or someplace. But as far as I was, my gang and the people that I went with, we were just pretty much, if we graduated, that's fine. That's what our parents had sent us there for.
Of course. course, get that degree,
But,
that's right.
Of course, our education is a lot different today than it
Oh,
was
my goodness,
during the
I should say.
Depression.
I
Oh,
should
my.
say.
Yeah.
Well, you're mentioning the Depression, of course. At our age, we remember that so very well. And did you experience any particular unforgettable things about the Depression that come to mind for you? Like,
yeah.
you know, music or...
Well, no, but I think the thing that really, that I remember more than anything else was the shock of coming from Nashville, Tennessee to Cincinnati, right at the height of the Depression.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, the friends that I made when I came here, we lived on Terrace Avenue in the Terrace apartment down, and just a small apartment. But I was in a high school. Well, it was a high school fraternity. That's what it was, and I'll never forget. We used to have during the school year. We used to meet on Saturdays at various members' homes.
Yes.
And this we had the one Ed Gamble and his younger brother. They were members in our fraternity, and I remember the first meeting that they had at their home, and we had the hamburgers and Coca-Colas, and it was nicely presented. It was in the fall of the year. It was lovely. They lived right around Grandin Road. Well, you know where the school is, that had the wall fall in right in back of our
Summit.
That's our Summit. We on the road around the back of it,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a very nice day, and I couldn't quite get over the fact that everything was just right, just so, until about a week later, somebody told me that wasn't a maid passing out the Coca-Cola, that was Mrs. Gamble.
Good heavens.
You know, I couldn't believe that. You know.
Yeah,
I not long came from Nashville, Tennessee, where, you know, the women down there, they couldn't boil water, you know.
Oh, that's very, very, very interesting. Well, we've been talking with Carl Clendening here, who is a delightful raconteur. Not only that, but served with great honor and bravery in Europe, European Theater of War, the ETO. Got 2 Purple Hearts. Was in a rifle platoon. Had experience in the early U.S. Air Corps, among other things. And Carl, we just can't thank you enough for your participation.
It's been my pleasure, sir.
Well, it's going to be very, very wonderful, and the fact that the library here and Kathy have done such a great job of helping preserve history, which is so important, and we want to let everybody know, whoever sees this. I hope, you know, your grandchildren, great-grandchildren, whatever, will have an opportunity to see this, and it will be on record that anyone anywhere in the country can pull from the archives and learn something more about, well, you know, they call it the greatest generation. I think that's a little overrated sometimes, because there were generations before us that were very great too, in the Civil War and the Revolutionary War and so forth. But you know, we can handle that appellation. So again, I want to thank you, and God bless, and keep up the good humor and the good health.
Well, thank you very much.
And it's
my pleasure.
it's just been wonderful. Thank you so very much.